And this all right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. You can do better than that. Good morning. You got to work. I truly did. I didn't anticipate that. Well, thank you all for being here today. My name is Alina Clark. I work for our Office of Core here at PennWest University. And our office is generally focused on being able to build community and provide various ways and opportunities for students, staff, faculty, our community to be able to learn and experience things that go beyond the classroom. And we like to do this by providing opportunities that allow you to think more critically about yourself, about leadership, about the way we show up in our communities and the way we just exist in the world. And so today we do have a really special opportunity to be able to do just that. We're joined by someone whose career spans military leadership, strategic communications, public service, and storytelling. And she has navigated these spaces at the highest levels possible. So Major General Marie Eder, prior to retirement, served in senior roles at the Pentagon, in Army leadership, and internationally through organizations like NATO. She's also a best-selling author whose work brings forward the powerful and often overlooked histories and stories of women's contributions to American history and history in general. What I personally find most compelling about General Eder's work is that she was an English major and an Edinboro alumni. And she's learned to tap into this framework in order to navigate her career and the life experiences, like how to make complex decisions, navigate very chaotic and stressful environments and situations, as well as how to tell stories that impact and influence how we see our world. So her experiences really demonstrate that leadership is not just about a title or position, but it's really how you think, how you act, and how you communicate in the moments that really matter. So with that being said, I'd like to give the chance to for our speaker to talk about her experience today. So please join me in welcoming.
Right. I paid some people to come. Probably obvious now. But it's always humbling and wonderful to be back home in Edinboro. And it snowed for me yesterday, so I haven't had time to be here. And Dr. Courtwright here. He's going to judge my performance today, and let's see if I get a passing grade. So, I could use a little help. But I want to talk to you about leadership. Because we see so much about leadership. We see so many books about leadership, so much talking about leadership. Do we need it all? Now, I started to look for books on leadership. Because in the Army, we would always talk about small unit leadership, large unit leadership. You need to read this book and this book. I found the top 50 books. Anybody read them? Right, that's exactly what I thought. So I've read some of these, but I will recommend one to you. And this is a new book that's by Sally Jenkins. It came out last year. It's called The Right Call. Sally Jenkins is a sports writer. And her book is about people in sports who were able to bring themselves up to the next level to lead teams. There's featured in there Peyton Manning, Olympic ice skaters, basketball stars, and she goes through what are the 7 elements that bring someone from being a regular performer up to the elite level, including conditioning, practice. Katie Ledecky, I haven't been in the pool for 2 days, and I need to get back in there because she loves the work of training. And so there's a lot of her examples that go to the preparation, the mindset, and resilience. What can you do when you fail? We all watched Lindsey Vonn at the Olympics. How did she take that failure? How did she take that accident? How did she process it and then use it to promote and project resilience. I got to be there. I got to stand in that starting gate that day. The rest of what happened is history, but I will always cheer on others. So we learn from people who display the leadership characteristics that we most admire. But we have a little chance to think about how we lead ourselves. So let's say this morning that I have a lottery ticket and I just realized I have won $1 million. And I'm going to go with one of my friends down to the hotel bar and have a beer to celebrate. Now we get to an intersection where I'm not looking when I cross the street, hit by a truck, that's that. Now you, my friends who are there beside me, see that lottery ticket in my pocket. Nobody else knows it's the winning ticket. Nobody knows. Do you take it? Are you allowed?
No, are you still alive?
No, I'm done. Don't tell anybody. So I am down in bed. There's this $1 million lottery ticket. Do you take it? Anybody want to take it? Okay. Anybody think someone will know if I do somehow? Or there's the other part of you that says it's not the right thing to do. Now, when we talk about leadership and character in the military, we are taught you do the right thing when nobody is looking, which is the hardest thing to do. I will admit that when I took this little quiz, first time I thought, yeah, I'd love to have that ticket. And then I took it and I put it back. So it's all yours if you want it. But let me talk to you about a couple of people who were not leaders of anything but themselves. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I was in New York. I have written a book about the women leaders in the New York Police Department. So I'm invited now to their conferences on leadership. So I was there at the beginning of March, and I got to talk to them about the history of women in the NYPD. The first women were hired in the police department around 1840. They were matrons. They were the ones who were supposed to clean the jail cells. Not exactly a great job, I think. But they also took care of runaway children, women who were victims or who were also perpetrators. They had to deal with them. On the left is Isabella Goodwin. So it's about 1898. And she's tired of that job and wants to prove herself. I can do more. So she's asked to go undercover and help bring a mobster in. They're not getting any information on this mobster. What she does is pretend that she is a maid in a hotel or a flop house as it was at the time, one that didn't cost very much to stay in overnight. And she made friends with the mobster's girlfriend. She's there for like 3 months. Sleeping in a closet, eating leftover bits of food, every day scrabbling to make a friend and get information. Does anybody expect her to succeed?
Yes.
She does. Nobody else does. This has never been done before. Why should we think that she could do such a thing? She does get the information. She is successful, and she's promoted to detective first grade. First grade in this case being the highest rank of detective. Now, what if she had failed? What if she had been killed? Would anybody come for her? Did she have any communications with the outside world? No. So one of the things I think that's important is the first person you have to lead is yourself. Come on, you can do this. You can do this. You can get through this. Let's get up. Let's get going. See if we can make it today. And that's how she got through this. Now there's Mary Sullivan off to the left. All right. Right, you're right. She's on that side. So Mary Sullivan joins in 1911. She has 3 brothers who were police officers, and her dad was a police officer. So she thinks she can do this. But this is the end of the golden age or the gilded age in New York. She shows up on the first day with the long dress, the buttoned high-top shoes, and a parasol. So she too is a matron. But by 1912, She has solved a similar case to that which Isabella Goodwin solved, and she's promoted to detective. She continues to do undercover work, and by 1926, she's promoted to head the Women's Bureau, because by now there are several hundred women joining the police department. And she stays in that job from 1926 to 1946. That's a long time. But like some organizations, some of which I have been in and will not mention, it's very political. So one of the things she tries to do is go to Albany to hopefully get more funding for salaries and benefits and retirements, and the bosses demote her. But then she is hired back. So we see a lot of this throughout history. First person you have to lead is yourself and do the right thing. Was it the right thing for her to do to go to Albany? She thought so. And it was the right thing for her people because it gave her even more respect. She wasn't successful then, but because she had been, movement grew, the chatter grew, and eventually the benefits increased. So I want to tell you a little bit about, again, what people say about leadership. This is a little bit of a presentation done by one of the colonels who worked for me. And it's called High Expectations of Leadership. Leaders always do this right. They always challenge and maintain their knowledge base. They support and help each other. I think this is Fantasy Island. Anybody agree with me? This is all too hard to do. Do we all accept constructive criticism and learn from it? Well, it's not my favorite thing. And I've gotten a lot of it too. I had the chief of staff of the Army stood me at attention one day in his office and proceeded to chew me out. It was like your grandfather chewing you out. And I liked it. Which was bad because then I started to laugh, which meant I got more. But all of this, I think, is much of what we read. Much of what we read does not relate to how we live, how we work, and how we want to be with those we are together with on teams, together in offices, together on missions, and in what we are actually doing. So what I think is realistic in expectations of leaders is you set the climate. When you come in as a leader to an organization, you say, this is my vision where we are going. The larger organizations, you need someone who says, I want to take us to this point. So if my boss said, I'm going to put up a poster of my top 10 priorities, everybody in that organization of 205,000 people can then say, well, I can't help with the logistics because I do personnel, but I can help with this one, and I can help with that one. So people know where they stand and how they can contribute and be part of the movement. Now, I've had bosses who have not made timely decisions, and it was a tactic. It wasn't that they couldn't decide, well, what should we do? Should we put the money into this project to go do this event? They put off making decisions because the longer you put off making a decision, the less you could be criticized for it. So I learned, as we all do, from bosses who teach us things, whether they realize it or not, of what to do and what not to do. You have to provide clarity with what your intent is. If you ever had a boss who said, well, I'll know it when I see it, that means they're never going to see it. And they're never going to realize that that is what they wanted. And you're never going to get it done to their satisfaction. Candor is important. Can you speak truth to power? I had one boss who said to me, so you're writing an article on communication. I said, yes, I am. I'm an expert in it. And he said, well, I'm going to review that before you publish it. I said, no, you're not. He was quite surprised at that. So was I. I didn't realize I was going to say it. But I made sure that I waited him out and I published it anyway. And it is still taught in schools and colleges in the Army on how to do strategic communication. But he wasn't going to help. And you also have to have a sense of humor, because if I ever think as a leader that I'm above this or that, or better than this or that, I will find out I am wrong. And that's where Batman comes in. Because at one point, in my last job in the Army, I had command of a new unit, which was where all of the attorneys, I had 1,875 attorneys. You think there was any agreement between them on anything? No. But they did invite me to speak to their CLE classes, continuing legal education. And they held them all over the United States because we had attorneys who were experts in contract law, admin law, prosecutors, defenders, and we had a judge unit. And they all had to take so many credit hours of continuing education. Now, I was up first at many of these. And the first one was held in San Diego. So to fit me into their schedule, that meant on Saturday morning, I'm speaking at 7:30. Point one, that does not make you popular. It's 7:30 on a Saturday morning. They had warned me the day before. We're staying in the hotel where Comic-Con is. Did I know what Comic-Con was? No. They were explaining to me just as I'm looking out the window going, that was everybody from Star Wars. But okay, I'm prepared now. I can deal with this. So the next morning I'm in the elevator, the glass enclosed elevator, so you can see down through the atrium into the main floor. And on the main floor, there are soldiers who are coming out in uniform, excuse me, to get coffee or whatever they might need. So I get into the elevator and Batman gets in with me. So we're standing there kind of looking at each other. And you know, there's that one moment when you can tell what another person is thinking. And we're both thinking the same thing. Is that a costume? So we get a little further down. He sees the other soldiers in the lobby. I'm dressed like they are. And he turns to me and says, "Thank you for your service." And I said, "Oh, Batman, thank you for your support." So I told that morning to the assembled attorneys in the room. But with all storytelling, there is purpose. So why would I tell them that? Because I'm telling them about a story of judgment. When you're judged just by how you look when you walk in, when you're judged by what you're wearing, when you're judged without any other thought. People judge all the time. We judge every moment we meet someone new. We judge when we don't like how someone looks, or maybe they remind us of someone else we didn't like. And so we're always being judged. So when I told that story to a group of 400 attorneys sitting there in a darkened auditorium, and when I came in, I was getting this. But when I was through, the lids closed on the laptops and the tablets, and then they were ready to listen to me. And anywhere I would go after that, at least one attorney would come up to me and go, "Tell the Batman, tell the Batman." So I'd have to tell it again. Now, when I left that command, I will tell you, I now have 12 Batman dolls. That was my gift. But there are more things we also have to know as leaders. Leadership is stressful. Decision-making is stressful. We have to be able to perform under stress. Now, one of the stories in Sally Jenkins' book is about Peyton Manning preparing for a game when the coaches are making them play with a wet football. And they're going, but we're in an enclosed stadium. A month later, they're in the playoffs and it's raining. And they're the only ones who know how to handle the ball. So you prepare, even though preparation is stressful, to be able to make it work. You have to be morally and ethically upright. I'll tell you that my biggest problem comes from seeing people who fragment themselves. Have you seen this where people behave? I'm one way with my friends, I'm another way with my family, and I'm another way at work. And that fragmentation of yourself is what causes some people to go astray. Because they think this is only happening here and no one in the other areas will ever know about it. There are many examples of people who've done this. One of them is a general. You can look up his name. It's Haight, H-A-I-G-H-T. He was in the European Command just after I was there, but I knew who he was. He was the head of operations for all of Europe, for all military services. He worked in a classified environment. You couldn't have phones in there. But he would come out during the day to get on his phone and set up what swinging club he was going to go to. He had an 11-year affair, belonged to multiple swinging clubs, and was finally caught. Prosecuted, forced to retire. Now, but he never saw an issue with this because that was one piece of his life and not all of it. So I am very much aware of how you have to maintain integrity, and you have to be one way with people. You have to be one way with yourself. And that is fully open and focused on where you are and what you're doing. He was very shocked that that happened. But we continue to see people who have issues because they do that. They look at one side and not the others. Have to maintain that self-discipline, fitness, training. If you're fit, if you get enough sleep, you can be able to face the day better and make better decisions. If we have problems sleeping, that's why I have the Aura ring now. It tells me I've had a good night's sleep. I don't agree, but that is correct. And you also have to understand people's expectations of you, which comes from their experiences. I had some subordinates say to me, well, why do you want to take this plane to this conference in New York? It's in Orange County. And I said, I'm not taking a plane to Orange County. It costs too much. I'm going to fly into New York and drive from you. And I will tell you that 25 people then suddenly changed their travel plans because they were intent on charging the government for their very expensive trip to Orange County, New York. Set the example with what you do, and people will follow. I had 2 young officers in my headquarters who were supposed to plan travel. And I said, can you find out if there is a military transport going from Washington down to Norfolk? Because I knew there was a plane that would go Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And you guys in the back, you want to come sit in the front? It's not church, really. Nobody's going to ask you for money. Okay, I'll ask you for money then. So they didn't want to do the training that came with figuring out this type of transportation. And one of them said to me, well, you just want to get a ride on your own private plane. And I said, what I want is to be able to not spend the government's money or for me to drive 4 hours when there is a plane already going and I can just get on it. Oh, because people expect the worst. Or they'd seen someone else who did do that with their travel money. And so they expect you to be like that. So I think you have to be aware of people's expectations and understand that you are not going to be like that, or that you are going to be different. And resilience, if something bad happens, how do you recover? Now, I'm not going to recover from being run over in front of the hotel bar, but if I had a traffic accident, skidded off the road, how would I take that? How would you take that? Well, that happened. Now we can go on. Or is it you relive it in your mind over and over and it becomes stressful to think about it? You're afraid to drive. Resilience, being able to face a problem, recover from it, and go on. That is a major leadership trait. And now I want to introduce you to Captain Tom Harrison. Now, my last command, as I mentioned to you, was in Salt Lake. And Tom Harrison lived in Salt Lake. One of my younger members came to me and said, I just read an article about this guy. He was in the Bataan Death March in World War II, captured along with some 12,000 other American soldiers in the Philippines, and along with, I think, I can't remember the exact number, I think it's more like 60,000 Filipinos. They were death marched 65 miles In the heat, they were exhausted, they were sick, there was no food, people stumbled, people fell, they were shot, they were left. Tom Harrison was a captain. He wasn't in a leadership position. He was another prisoner. But he was the one who told people, get up, keep going, stay with me. I'm with you. Come on, let's go. He's not released from that captivity until 1945. He's on a hospital ship back to the US where he meets his wife. And you see her there with him too. So they come back. Well, do you want to have a ceremony? Get your awards? No, I want to go home. So years later, he is at the VA hospital and his wife fills out a piece of paper that says, yes, I'd like my awards. And when they come, there are some there he never knew he had. He knew he had the Victory Medal, probably the Pacific Medal, but there were a lot more. And so this young member of my command came up to me and said, can we do something for him? Yes, and you're in charge of it. Which is not passing it off. It's letting him assume the responsibility for an idea he had that was brilliant. So what he did was build a shadow box for these awards. And we had so many young people who had never seen a Silver Star for valor, which is second only to the Medal of Honor. We also saw that he had a Prisoner of War Medal and many others. And so we had people come in every day and want to see them, to touch them, to read why he had earned them. And then we put them in the shadow box. And then we had an event. It was all about some of my subordinate commanders and, well, some of his kids are there too. And he didn't leave my side that night. Now, he's passed away since then, but he taught me a lot about leadership too. And I think we owe all of them our respect, our understanding, and adherence to standards for what they did to create the world we have today and where we are. But am I getting close to passing the grade here? Okay, that sounds good. But just to be sure, I want to leave you with a few words from the ultimate speaker on leadership, and that's Colin Powell. So we can sum it all up in just a few words that he says.
My name is Amy Wilkinson. I'm a White House Fellow. My question is how you would define the key characteristics of effective leadership that allow you to go and be an advocate for good.
Trust. The longer I have been in public service and the more people have asked me about leadership over the years, leadership ultimately comes down to creating conditions of trust within an organization. Good leaders are people who are trusted by followers. Leaders take organizations past the level that the science of management says is possible. One of my sergeants back in the infantry school at Fort Benning almost 50 years ago, which is where I learned everything I ever got to learn about leadership, was at the infantry school. And he said to me one day, he said, "Lieutenant, you'll know you're a good leader when people follow you, if only out of curiosity." I've never had a better definition, because what he was saying, and I've seen it experienced in my life so many times. What he was saying is they trust you, and you have built up that trust. How did you do it? Clear mission and statement, selfless service. People look to you and they trust you because you're serving selflessly as the leader, not self-serving, selflessly, and that you prepare the followers, you train them. You give them what they need to get the job done. Don't give them a job if you're not going to give them the resources, and that you're prepared to take the risks with them. And so they would teach us at the infantry school, no matter how cold it is, Lieutenant, you must never look cold. No matter hungry you all are, Lieutenant, you must never appear hungry. No matter how terrified you are, Lieutenant, you must never look terrified. Because if you are scared, terrified, hungry, and cold, they will be scared, terrified, hungry, and cold. I've gotten away with that many, many times in the course of my career by being scared to death, cold, and wanting to go to sleep. But no, let's go. Let's keep going. Let's go around this corner, if only out of curiosity. And they'll follow you into the darkest night, down the deepest valley, up the highest hill, if they trust you. So the essence of leadership is about doing all that the science of management says you can with resources, but then taking it that extra step and giving it that spark. And that spark comes from getting people to trust you so that they will follow you, if only out of curiosity. Thank you.
Thank all of you for listening to me, even if only out of curiosity. Sure.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, we have some time to be able to do so.
Yes, sir.
There you go. My name's Eder. Would you say anybody is capable of leadership, or do you think that certain people are just against
I think anybody is capable of being a leader. It's what we want to accept as the requirements and the responsibilities of it. I have friends who said, I never wanted to be a supervisor. I'm not dealing with that. So if you are able to say, I accept what it means to take this on, that it's going to be hard some days, it's going to be stressful, I'm going to make mistakes, then yes, anybody can be a leader. It's hard to be a follower too, especially if you don't agree with the leader, because I've seen those. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Under our cross-cutting to all sectors and areas for our science, military, leadership, leadership and lawlessness about that.
Do you want me to repeat that for the recording? Sure. Are some of the leadership attributes specific only to the military or to large organizations, or are they cross-cutting to others? I think they're the same. I use military examples because that is one of the ways in which we can talk about large organizations, large commands, large movements of moving people, and how you motivate and move large groups. But they apply to all organizations. That's why I mentioned the book about sports, because the 7 attributes of leadership you find in this book about sports cut across every segment of organization or work or leadership that you could find. Now, what is specific to the military is the focus on the owner of a profession. Sometimes we may not see that in business, but you will see many business organizations, many companies have their own. Here's what we believe in, that we have pride in service, that we create a good product, that you will like our French fries. But it is what they do that they take pride in. And that is similar to every organization.
When we were students here, that you were editor of the Cardinal, which was a yearbook we used to have. Can you relate back to things you did as editor of the yearbook to prepare you for service in the military, leadership role?
I'm not sure I remember anything from those days, but I think it's a good trial for you to take on a position you've never had and then try to figure out how to do it. What we all do is look to someone who did it right, or we look to the person before us who did it wrong and say, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to do it this way. And even if it's, let me build a team to work on this project and then give the people on that team responsibility and freedom to make their own decisions within their lane, then it will work. And I'll work on the memory part. Yes, sir.
Years ago, I met another remarkable woman here by the name of Janet Rita, who had to make the decision about whether to publish that manifesto, which was major, in consultation with the FBI. She does it, we capture. Moral courage. Some might say it's lacking today. You may disagree. That's a personal thing. Now getting political. how do we balance more?
Do we have anything that is not political today?
It's getting tough.
It's getting tough.
Yeah. And
Moral courage comes down to, if I make a decision this way, it's not what will happen, it's can I live with what I have done? If I make a decision in this way, can I live with what I have done? One of our sayings has always been in the military, you don't walk by a mistake. If I see something that's wrong, I am compelled by my focus and my belief in the tenets of my profession that I will stop and make a correction. I was at Fort Lee, Virginia one day when I'm at a stoplight and a young soldier comes by me on a skateboard with a cigarette. And I had time to go, and he was gone. But I tracked him down. Because that was inappropriate. When I was at the NYPD 2 weeks ago, I looked outside their training building and the American flag is frayed. Now, and it looks bad. I believe that we have a duty to make sure that our flag is respected, and it is respected and cared for. And I went right up to the desk sergeant and said, you need to fix that. And I'll stay right here until you do. And so they fixed it. But it's the ability to make that decision based on who you are and what your beliefs are. Now, we do see people who do not want to make a decision and they put it off, as I had mentioned. Or if they make a decision to do nothing because they fear the consequences, even if it's one way or the other or both. But that doesn't help you with your ability to lead yourself and believe in yourself. Yes, sir.
Okay. As someone who's worked at like some pretty high places, I'm just curious to know, have you ever had any encounter with like
Aliens?
anybody?
We
No,
can talk about
no.
that. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, like, have you ever had any encounter with people who have been maybe higher than you that have spoken to you any about Jesus?
Sure.
And how does that play a role in like the decisions that they make?
Sometimes, depending on what the organization is or what the mission is, we don't want politics to enter into it or religion. But the tenets of doing the right thing are in every religion. So yes, we have had some discussions, and we do still say the Pledge of Allegiance in government. We do still have a chaplain make remarks before events, and the chaplain may say, "Pray with me in whatever your beliefs are. Please join me in prayer according to your beliefs." So we are inclusive in that sense because military is a melting pot of all types of backgrounds, experiences, people from all over the country. So we have different races, religions, languages, and it is a learning experience every day to be exposed to. So we have it.
Would it possibly be better if you separated them based on your peer to identify with?
No. Aren't we all better when we learn from each other? True, it does. It does, but we are all also, in many ways, because we belong to a certain organization, all the same. We're the same because we are part of that organization and its tenets and its beliefs, whether that is the Green Bay Packers or the Army.
Some people are better, but kind of the roles that are established, like for the country than them.
Well, those belong to the Pittsburgh Steelers. My Green Bay friends are not going to be happy about that. Yes, sir.
I was fascinated by your experience as a captain in the Philippines. My father was a World War II veteran, and my question is, in your early career, did you have a lot of World War II experienced leaders that influenced you?
Well, I haven't been around that long.
They've been around.
They were joining the Army in a period of time that was not long after Vietnam. So we did have Vietnam veterans. We did have people who had suffered greatly during that time. And in the Army of the 80s, it was not well funded. There were issues with leadership, there were issues with drug use, and it was not a good time to be part of an organization like that that was still struggling to reestablish itself. And that took it a while. Now, as far as World War II veterans, I have met a number of them. I've spoken at the National World War II Museum in New Orleans. I'm part of the D-Day Memorial in Bedford. So I meet a lot of veterans who are still facing tours. We're losing them at an ever greater rate. I think there's less than 1% of the World War II veterans who are still living. And so I had tried to write about many of them and tell some of their stories. I met 2 of them who were still living as I was writing the book. And for the rest, I have met their families, their children, their grandchildren, their neighbors, and learned what they did for little or no recognition, because we don't do it for the recognition anymore. We do it to do the right thing. So thank your father for his service. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
How do you handle in leadership positions subordinates and even superiors who have maybe inherent biases, and how do you command respect and build trust with those individuals?
Sometimes that's where the evil sense of humor comes in, because I will make fun of it in public. Oh, you really didn't mean that, did you? I mean, how could you? No one else would ever say such a horrible thing. And I would do it like that. So you can let people know they're wrong without destroying them completely, or without harming their self-sense or what they feel is their position. You can just say, this thing is wrong. And you can do it with, with a smile and a laugh. I think it works. It has worked for me. It did not work, however, when the chief of staff of the German Air Force chewed me out at a meeting. And for some reason, it struck me funny that no one else I knew had ever been chewed out by a German general from the Air Force. And so my boss had to make him go away, because I was still standing there while he was yelling, but was struggling to not laugh. And but let's say he apologized later. But it was in German, and my German wasn't that good yet, so I missed most of it. Yes, sir.
How did you achieve success when collaborating with leaders that you might not agree with?
I think there's always a position where there is some agreement, even if it's just a small piece, or if you can come to a place of agreement or negotiation or accommodation or compromise. And I've always been able to do that because we are on the same team. We're on the same team, and even if we don't agree on how to go about it, what we need to do first. And I have had sessions with subordinates who wanted to convince me that their way is correct. And in one of them, I said, you're right. You're right. I was wrong. You were right. Stop explaining. I already got it. So, but because he had another whole 2 pages of things he said. I understand your point. You're correct. And he was surprised, because some people can't admit this. You have to be able to admit when you're wrong. Then I had a boss too who was leading a formation, and he said, I gave my intention of what we were to do. And later, one of my subordinates told me I was wrong, and I realized they were all right. So it's being able to admit that I think can take you a longer way in that type of situation. Anybody else? Because Alina really wants to take over now.
But I can be patient.
All yours.
I do have one more question though.
Oh, now that wasn't what I meant.
But since I'm taking over. Something that I have really found interesting about you is specifically your background in English. And I'm interested in knowing, like, that's not necessarily a major that we associate with the military. Did your background in English influence your experience at all? Like, did it contribute or help you?
Yes, thank you very much. So I think the liberal arts in general mean that you can do many different things. Now, my background in English meant that I wanted to write. I wanted to do journalism. I wanted to do public relations. And I couldn't figure out where that was in the Army at first. And that's because it was not then something you could do upon entry. You had to be have a basic branch or a basic function first before we let you get into this higher level. But once I figured that out and I got there, certainly my background was very helpful. Not that I wrote fiction then. I still want to write fiction. That's what I wanted to do when I retired, was write trashy mystery novels. Still working on that. I have written nonfiction, and my experiences in writing communication books, communication articles for the military and for other organizations too, helped me immensely. Because you know how to put something together, the beginning, the middle, the end, the arc of the story. By the end of Act 3, the hero is in trouble, but we know that he will prevail in the end. So that's what I want to write. Stay tuned, trashy mysteries coming. Yeah. All right. Okay.
Well, so thank you so much for being here today. And I'm going to tie it back quickly at one of my takeaways into your English experience, you say, the beginning, the middle, the end. I'm going to reference the very beginning of her presentation, where she tried to talk about and introduce the idea of sports leadership when thinking of all the books that were written about it. And I think throughout her presentation, that's one of my biggest things, is that because we don't talk about athletic leadership enough, where you are indeed like working to be your best self, and you're eating, you're working out, you're trying to exist, but you're also doing it in the trust that your teammates are doing it as well. And you're doing it both for yourself and for them. And that kind of leadership perspective is something that I don't think we often emphasize enough when we think of the word leadership. I know that when I talk to a lot of our students here, they say, well, I'm not a leader because I'm not a president of a club, because I'm not this, I'm not that. But I don't think that that's how it really manifests, that it really is in how we operate in forming our campus community and how we build teams and group projects in classes, how we operate and exist in a shared communal space like this. And I just wanted to bring that back because I think it's really interesting to really just emphasize that it's personal, it's assuming mutual responsibility among yourself and others, and it's really having to trust that those around you are going to do what's is expected because you're going to do the same. So thank you so much for your presentation. And I do want to quickly thank the faculty who brought their classes here today. Dr. Kevin Courtwright's Leadership in Ethics and Criminal Justice, Dr. Gary Gendlin's Introduction to American Politics, and Robert Haas's College Composition class, as well as to our ROTC who supplied our flags to respectfully celebrate and welcome the Major General. I also want to thank our tech team and our catering people for helping set up. This room is not necessarily always equipped with technology to live stream and record, so we appreciate that we were able to document and record this part of our PennWest experience. And so thank you again for making the time to come all the way up to Edinboro. We're really glad to welcome you back. And if you all you're welcome to stick around in the room. We've got some coffee and snacks back there. We have the room till 1 to kind of socialize and mingle. I can see that we have a lot of community members who maybe haven't regrouped in quite a while. But otherwise, please join me in giving another round of applause.
Really need to learn how to do that.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yes, I thought of that. And I was going to. But there are a lot of big people out there, but I always be stuff.